Hello, everyone. I am Bodil Mansson, Managing Director for FCM Travel in the Nordics. And today I will have a chat together with Lotten Fowler, who is the General Manager for SBTA, the Swedish part of GBTA. So please, Lotten, if you can introduce yourself a little bit more.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Lotten Fowler, as mentioned. I've been with the Swedish Business Travel Association for over 10 years now. Time flies when you're having a good time, and I'm in the best place you could be in the business travel industry. Lots of fun. SBTA is an old association. We've been around for 38 years now, and we are one of the founding partners of GBTA in Europe, but also of a new association founded earlier this year in February, which is called the European Network of Business Travel Associations, BT4Europe.
Yeah, and we will actually talk a little bit about that later on. But first, I would like to ask you, being part of that organization now for 10 years and running it, and I know that you are very much appreciated in the organization and around in the travel industry as well. So what have you seen changes in focus area from the buyer's perspective during this time?
As we all know, it turned everything upside down. I think the changes that we can see now after the pandemic coming back again to travel is a much stronger focus on sustainability, primarily that. And how to, because travel stood more or less still and we didn't have any costs is not the issue today. So the issue is, as we return, how do we do that in a sustainable manner? And how do we make sure that we can calculate and we can report what we do, make the best choices? So I think sustainability is definitely on top. There's one other thing which is very much in focus at the moment, but and it's been on the travel manager's table. It's not quite as much anymore, but that's the whole issue around the Posted Workers Directive and the A1. It came into place a few years ago, but because of the pandemic, we didn't really notice what this was all about. But now as we're increasing again, it's like, how do we deal with this? So that's another one of those issues.
Yeah, I can understand that. And it brings more administration to everyone and no one
does. Yeah.
So, but going back to sustainability, of course, that is a very strong question for the whole world, but maybe especially in Sweden and in the Nordics. And it was interesting. You just mentioned cost versus the emissions. So, of course, we have been looking at travel programs before where cost and savings is in focus. Would you say that now that have changed? So sustainability is the focus more than the cost?
When I listen to the big buyers, the multinationals, it sounds different now than when it did before. Yes, sustainability can cost today, which it couldn't really before. It was more a nice to have. And today, everyone is aware of the fact that we will need to pay to be sustainable. But I think it's also a question of, because we are traveling less, and I think many of them will be trying to travel less even going forward. We try and change the programs, travel differently. We don't go for the same kind of day meetings that we did before, etc. So there's a saving being made by traveling and working differently in this new world. So the savings there, how do we then, so there is some money to spend, and we will then choose to spend that on being more sustainable. So I think it's a combination. It's not that everyone's just going to spend loads of money, but we've already made a saving in now traveling differently. So
okay. So that is, so when you say that there is a willingness to maybe pay more to be sustainable, of course, one thing is to do a carbon offset. And I think that has been part of the Nordic travel program for absolutely many years, more than 10 years, maybe. But what else can you see that the members of the association are willing to spend more money on to have a more sustainability program?
I've just how to explain this in a good way. We've talked about, for instance, air travel. So we have a problem today in the industry that we work so much with standards or with estimates. So a return flight New York Stockholm is going to cost X, no matter what airline you fly with, no matter what load factor would they have, no matter etc. So there is an interest to find better ways of calculating sustainability. And if I can prove that the choice I've made, yes, it's more expensive, but it's also more sustainable, then I'm willing to do that. If I can't prove it today, there's going to be a question. So why are we paying more for this ticket if we can't show that it's more sustainable? So it needs to go hand in hand with increased possibilities of displaying the sustainable choices.
Yeah, I understand. See the difference of aircrafts, airlines, initiatives, etc. So I understand that. So then, of course, it's one thing, because I think that here as mentioned in the Nordics, we do have a lot of local programs also from the suppliers. But how does that match with global initiatives from airlines? Is there a mismatch as you see it, or is it goes hand in hand? Is it easier to be sustainable if you just travel within the Nordics than if you?
Of course it is.
And I'm not talking about like it's long distance, of course.
No, and somehow it's easier to travel. To travel in the Nordics, also on the hotel side. So we have a lot of very strong players on the Nordic market who do amazing things on the hotel front. But as soon as I leave this country, or this region, we can't be as sustainable because the options might not always be there. So the more complex a program becomes, of course, the more difficult it becomes to be sustainable. And I think there's a frustration there in, I know what I could do, but I can't do it because it's not possible over there. And I think many of us need to come to a conclusion that maybe just doing a bit is better than doing nothing. I can't sit and wait for the complete solution. I need to start somewhere and calculate the things I can calculate, measure the stuff I can measure, and sort of be happy with that and go from there.
Yeah, I think that is pretty smart, because everyone can do something.
Yeah.
And that is then interesting also about the increase of rail requests. We can see it, and I'm sure that you talk about it as well. And then we are not talking about domestic rail, but going rail outside in Europe. And we talked about cost, but what about travelers' convenience if you have a program that is asking for rail through Europe?
Again, I don't think anyone's going to tell their traveler to leave home on a Sunday evening to take the train down to that meeting in Paris on Monday. But I think where we can be better is buying the train tickets within Europe. So we fly down to the continent and then we travel by train instead of, for instance, renting a car or taking a taxi. So, and there we also again need increased technology and increased solutions so that we can do this. But now that the demand is there, which it really hasn't been before in the same way as it is now, I'm thinking that there's going to be development, there's going to be innovation because there is a demand.
Yeah, I believe so.
And I know there's a frustration. There's a frustration with many buyers that they can't buy the ticket at home, that the traveler needs to go and buy it on a station, and then it doesn't work and it's not convenient.
No, I totally agree. Also from our perspective, it's sometimes hard to get those train tickets straight through Europe with many different rail companies, etc. So there needs to be better system and tools, and I'm absolutely sure that there will be any innovations in this area, and we are looking forward to that. And taking that maybe as a bridge over to the new organization that you have started, because I also believe that you will do some lobbying when it comes to things that needs to be done to be handled travel buyers' demand. So if you can tell us a little bit more about why you thought that there was a need to start the Business Travel for Europe, since I know that you have been strongly influenced also, have a strong influence in this part. And yeah, just tell us the background and how you see about it.
Happy to do that. Thank you for asking. No, I think the business travel needs a stronger voice in Europe, and we've talked about it for a long time, but we haven't managed to get it done. I know it's been in the making many times. Efforts have been made to start it during these 38 years, but it hasn't really come together until now. And I think one of the driving forces for that was the pandemic. One was that there was suddenly time for us to start talking about this and working on this, because we weren't traveling and we weren't busy doing events and arranging stuff. So we had the time to speak to each other as associations. Another reason was that the pandemic made it so clear that we need a voice in Europe. We saw countries and regions making decisions from one day to the next without thinking about what this would do to the so important travel done for business. So one thing that I can't go on vacation, that's fine. I can stay at home for a few years if that's necessary. I don't need to go to Spain. But I might need to go to Spain for work. And how does that influence our industries and our banks, our GDP results or levels, etc. So business travel is so important for employment and for money in Europe. So we started talking about it about 18 months ago, 20 months ago now. And I think that was really quick. There are 13 founding associations from 12 countries in Europe. And I believe this is in the countries where there are independent business travel associations, we're all in it together. Our ambition is to grow so it's an association for associations. And our primary focus is going to be advocacy, industry affairs. So we want to affect the decision makers on an EU level, on a national level sometimes, but also, for instance, the UK. So we need to be here now to work on that together. We have an office in Brussels. We have a lobbying firm in Brussels that we've hired together. And we've started 4 working groups on the 4 main topics that we've decided to focus on in the beginning as we start working.
Okay, that is really interesting. So what is like the first topics that you are working on right now? What has been like the top?
I think for us to be of interest and to be, to have their ear and to make them listen to what we're saying is we need the facts and figures of business travel. There aren't any independent facts and figures around business travel. So that's our first task, to try and gather good data on what business travel accounts for when it comes to employment, when it comes to GDP, when it comes to what we represent in Europe. And it's not just the business travel industry, it's the corporations that we represent, because if they can't travel and do business, that's going to affect the entire Europe. So we're looking at gathering data and collecting data from different sources, and with an independent external resource, try and gather this into a business travel index for Europe, good data for Europe. That's primary, that's a really important task, because they're not going to listen to us if we just come and knock on their door without that information. And then we've got three other main topics. So one is the restart of business travel. We need a coherent approach across Europe and across the world to business travel. The second big focus area is sustainability, of course. We've already been there. So as we restart, how do we do that in a sustainable fashion? What does the industry need to be more sustainable? We don't need taxes. We need we need initiatives, and we need innovation, and we need to explain what we can work with as an industry when it comes to sustainability. There are lots of initiatives going on in the EU right now on sustainability, and we'll be pitching in with information and opinions where we can. And the last one is digital transformation. So there are plenty of digitalization or digital projects going on in the EU. How do we get that into? How do we fit that in? And it has to do with sustainability, as we talked about before. It does have to do with the restart of business travel. So COVID certificate is one, for instance, the A1 posted worker directive. We can't impose more work. They need to be digital. So everything that is done needs to be included in the processes that are already in place for this to be functional for some.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we are looking so much at the same thing when it comes to digitalization. It's so important for us as well, both to use data that we already have to be smarter, but also to be a lot more productive and efficient. And of course, that means that we need to work a lot with you as well to achieve that and to understand the real demands and also the differentiators that you have among yours, because you're not one, you are many. But I
are many, yeah.
Because you talk about we need to understand. Who is it that needs to understand in your point when you talk about the new organization?
We need the decision makers to understand what business travel is and how important business travel is to Europe.
And the decision makers, you mean the politicians
politicians and the people who work with preparing the different, everyone in Brussels really working with preparing the different proposals and directives and etc. Yeah, and the national governments. So for instance, when we started closing borders between like Sweden and Norway, for those of you who don't know the region, we have a very, very long border that sort of follows the entire country. And we have people living on one side, working on the other. People cross that border daily. And from one day to the next, one country closed the border to the other one and there was no information. I mean, what does that affects travel? So we need to make governments speak to each other in a way they haven't before, because they need, and if they don't do it, we'll tell them business is hurting. So, decision makers.
I know that the travel agency associations also have kind of a strong lobbying in Brussels. And how do you work together? Mm-hmm. Or are there any initiatives for you to work together?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're open to working with anyone who shares our opinions. So we're in contact. We have an open door to GBTA, trying to align our messages so that we will speak as one voice. We have meetings. We have several meetings every day with all the association, the EU Travel Tech, with the travel agency associations in Brussels. With just lost everything now, but we're having meetings all along, and with suppliers, individual TMCs such as yourself, with the GDSs, with the airlines, because this is a mutual task that we all have. And sometimes our messages will align and we'll be able to support each other's, and sometimes they might not align, and then we'll just talk about different things. But when we have the same message, we should definitely speak together, which we do. So
yeah, I believe that you could have a great influence, knowing that it could be also kind of harsh and hard too. But with the how passionate you are about it, I think that it will go well. And knowing you for years, I know you will not stop trying.
Thanks. No.
So also about this that we just talked about, but also around the sustainability, how can this all come down to the individual traveler? Because many times we talk on a rather higher level, maybe, but at the end of the day, it's the traveler that is making the trips. If you talk about the sustainability part as well, one thing is to communicate, yes, we have this program, but how does it go down to the traveler? And also the initiatives that you are now making in this organization, how will the traveler notice this?
Hopefully through legislation and regulation that makes it easier for them to travel rather than more complicated. Mm-hmm. So with an increased digitalization, we can cross borders smoothly through biometrics, through new technology, apps. So we're all for that as long as the company's needs are taken into account. So I think the traveler is going to hopefully notice a smoother journey. When it comes to sustainability, I think the travelers are asking, I mean, they're raising their hands and they're wanting to choose the sustainable option, but it's not really possible for them to do it today, not in as much detail as they want and as the corporates want. So I hope that innovation and development is going to show the traveler that we can go back to smooth travel, and we can, the way it was before, it's not there yet, and then even better in the future with more innovation and more technology.
Thank you. That is really, really interesting. And of course, we want to work, not only us, but all TMCs want, of course, to work in this development area together with all the members of your association and all other companies also traveling, of course. But just to have a small summary and also the question going, what is the most desired right now? What's the need from the TMC? What do we need to change?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah, but take it short. If the list is long.
There's so much going on at the moment, and the role of the travel manager and the corporation has not become easier in time. It's become more and more complicated. The pandemic has now, even more, the effects of the pandemic and even more increased the workload of the travel manager. There are more things to think about, more things that I need to understand and get involved in. And I think that the role of the TMC is more important than ever. So 30 years ago, if it was about helping someone make a reservation, it's anything but that today. So I think there is a need for support, for professionalism, for development. There are so many new areas that we can develop and that the TMC can support the corporate in. So I think there's a future for both business travel. Definitely we need to. Globalization is not going to go away. And for a TMC to take a role in that. So, and I think the challenge today is for the travel manager to figure out, where am I in all this? How much do I need to understand about all the things that are happening? What should I spoke to someone yesterday. She said, it's so difficult for me to, I really should be pushing this off my desk because there are other people who should be worrying about this. But then I know that it will affect my travelers, so I can't really. So I think to find the balance between how involved I get in all these different changes that are going on at the moment, what do I delegate and what do I, leave to my TMC, leave to other departments, defining the new role, because I think it could become a new role. It's definitely not about procurement to the same extent as it has been.
No, I think that the pandemic was showing that, and the importance of the travel manager role really came up to the surface.
And the TMC role. I mean, it was both these two roles were suddenly highlighted, and everyone realized that, wow, we have something called a TMC. Yeah. I'm talking about the people outside of the travel management team. So management suddenly realized.
Yeah. I understand. Okay, thank you very much, Lotten. It's been great talking to you. Is there anything else you would like to add that is on your mind before we close this?
No, I'd just like to say thank you very much for inviting me. I'm honored, and I wish you a wonderful conference.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you soon again.
Thanks.
Thank you.